What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Neptune Park, episode 2 of this Planet Coaster series, in which we're going to accomplish a couple of things. We're going to create the entrance building, which, of course, all Planet Coaster builds need, and we're going to build the rest of the monorail station as well. So what you can see we're doing here is basically doing like a rough sketch of what I want the building to be. Kind of want it to be this sort of abstract-y, sort of paper windmill-y sort of layout. So that's what I was doing there, just to kind of establish this sort of basic thing, and then we could just build the building around it. It's actually going to be made of several different buildings, because it's going to be very angular. I wanted to kind of avoid kind of the general blockiness that a lot of Planet Coaster buildings end up having, so I had to take a few artistic liberties here and there, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out overall. Now, I hope that I'm showing enough energy. I'm not being as energetic as I usually like to be, because it's hay fever season. I'm either getting a cold or I've just been hit with the seasonal allergies, and it's not great. I'm a bit bunged up. Before I did this, before I sat down to record this, I kind of, had like lots of hot water to drink to loosen the old vocal cords and everything. So hopefully I don't sound too bad, but that's why I might be sounding a little bit different to how I normally sound. But anyway, onwards and upwards. By the way, I did listen to all of your very respectful and critical feedback, actually, from last episode regarding the face cam. And as you can see, I've taken heed of this and I've scrapped it. I thought, it's good to experiment, but, you guys let it be known that it didn't really add much and was actually more of an annoyance. So it's gone now, so we can all relax and just listen, just tolerate the horrendous lurching camera movements and my bunged up voice instead. So hope this is fine. So yeah, a lot of experimentation went into it in this building. I had to, as you can see, I've been using this sort of angular structure, so I've had to kind of sort of cheat in places. So I've been using kind of floor pieces to build that wooden paneling, and then I've been using the temple walls to do the angular sort of beige parts as well. And as you can see, to kind of get those weird non-right angles, you actually have to make a separate building and kind of place them next to each other so they kind of look like one structure. But I forgot that by doing so, everything would be flipped, and as such, it would look terrible. So I had to essentially spin the thing round and then sort of reverse engineer it. I almost had to rebuild it entirely from scratch. You can see I'm having to rotate all the individual parts. With the wood paneling, I had to give up and just build all that again from scratch. But everything else, I was able to kind of wing it, and I didn't have to end up building the entire side again. But that's kind of how this building is formed. We have these two kind of sides here, and then once we've established, we've got the right side and the left wing, and once we've got both wings, we can then just duplicate that around, trying to stick as close to that spray paint pattern as possible I painted on the floor, and then we should have a nice little building layout by the end of it. So yeah, that's this building, and then this is kind of a bit of a sporadic video, to be honest, because when I was doing this is actually quite a lot of time in real life that you're just watching in time lapse. So I ended up getting bored in places building this building, so then I went off to build the monorail station, then I built something else, then I came back to this building. So this will go a little bit all over the place, and hoping that kind of the speed at which the footage is playing, it shouldn't become too soporific. So yeah, that's that. So you can see we've got the two arms now, so we can select them all. Well, actually, no, I'm getting too ahead of myself. I'm getting way too keen. We actually have to build a roof as well. And because we're using this kind of weird custom angle, none of the actual stock roof pieces will work, so we had to use the geometric shapes. And that's kind of a recurring theme of this series, using the geometric shapes to kind of accomplish, more interesting angles than the normal building pieces permit. So that's pretty much kind of all the talking I need to do in order to set this video up, really. There's only so much I can do without kind of ending up repeating myself. So I guess I could kind of go back to what this series sort of was at one point, I guess, in Crimson Tower, which is just using it as a soapbox to talk about what's going on, in the past week or so. And this week, I uploaded, yesterday. Well, for me, it's today. But for you guys, it will be yesterday, provided I get this video uploaded on time. Otherwise, it might be, a couple of days ago. Okay, so now we've got all the grounds covered. I should be okay to proceed. I uploaded a video on improvement, which I was really happy with that video. I was a little bit anxious, and some people did call me out on it, that it kind of didn't really say a lot. As a couple of people got really annoyed, actually, that it was 10 minutes long, because apparently that makes you a money-sucking douchebag. I was going to say doofus, then went to say douchebag, and ended up kind of making this weird amalgamation of the two. I mean, I don't ever intentionally make videos longer than 10 minutes. I'm not even entirely sure what it does. And everybody's like, oh, it's just loaded with ads. I just tell YouTube to just auto place ads. And there's a little tick box, just auto place. So I'm sorry if YouTube didn't do a great job placing the ads on that occasion. But it's funny. I'll make a video that's 9 minutes long and everyone praises me for saying, oh, you didn't do the 10-minute thing. And then I'll make a video that's 11 minutes long. No one bats an eye. But if you make one that's between 10 minutes and 10 minutes 59 seconds, oh, well, good luck to you, my friend. But I appreciate this is a vocal minority. I just thought it was kind of a funny observation that I made when I was looking at the comments of that video. Anyway, yeah, like I say, I hope you enjoyed that video. And I am sort of looking for things to talk about with this one, but I'm guessing it's pretty obvious what's going on here. I'm just duplicating it around and then just doing the fine tuning now. So in fact, this is the one side. I'm adding the railings here, obviously, for this balcony in air quotes. It doesn't actually have a door or any means of accessing it, but you can just pretend one of those glass panels is a door. I don't know. This is actually the only wing I actually put the railing on for some reason. Like I said earlier, I got bored and moved on to something else and never came back to it. So it'll be quite a few episodes down the line. I know some of you will be absolutely, clutching the edges of your seat, waiting for me to place the railings on the other wings. So I'm just going to let you down gently now. It doesn't happen in this episode. So as you can see, we're kind of left with the way the roofs of each wing, of each kind of bit of the building. Probably should have thought about how I was going to phrase that before I said it. The way they're shaped, it means that we couldn't really get a nice sort of stitching between the two roofs. We ended up with this sort of jaggedy pattern here. So what I'm doing here is just covering it up with a slightly elevated portion of roof, just to, adds a little bit more kind of depth, texture to the building, just makes it that more a little bit visually interesting, but also it does serve the function of covering up that horrible raggedy edge that connects the two sort of sides of the building together. So yeah, so what else have I talked about? That was the video I uploaded yesterday or the day before or a couple of days ago, depending on how things are going in terms of my general capableness to upload things punctually. But yeah, there was that, and also I spent the whole weekend up in Scotland. It's well known fact that all pro KSP players every year, we all make the religious pilgrimage to make an offering at the birthplace of Scott Manley. That's not the reason I was there. I was just going to a wedding, so it was literally in the middle of nowhere. Let me think. I set off from, first of all, I live in Plymouth, which for those of you that don't know, if you think of like the UK. So you kind of got Scotland is the bit at the top, obviously. The thing right at the bottom left of the UK, that kind of sort of lizard's tail sort of thing coming off the bottom, that's where Plymouth is. It's literally, you can't get further away than where I went. And I flew to Inverness Airport, which is about as north as you can get in Scotland without going to the Shetland Islands. So on Friday, I have to take a day off work, obviously, to make it. So we set off at 9, drove to Bristol Airport for 2 hours, flew for an hour, and then so it took us the best part of probably about 8 or 9 hours to get to where we needed to go, because not only is this in Scotland, but it was in like remote Highland Scotland. I think it was somewhere in between Loch Ness and Narnia in terms of how isolated this place was. The only public transport was a bus that was once an hour and a steam train. So that goes to show how ancient this place is. But we made it nonetheless. And we stayed in an Airbnb. I'd never stayed in an Airbnb before, so I was pleasantly surprised. I'm going to do that more often now, I think, Airbnbs, because I never really liked hotels. I don't know about you guys, but like I'm guessing a lot of you are kids. I don't mean that as an insult or anything. I just mean that just by general demographic. Most of you are probably kind of still living with parents and things, so you don't necessarily have this perspective. But I hate staying in hotels and things because I like cooking for myself. I don't like to go into a hotel. It's like, oh yeah, breakfast is at 9, or like, no, from 7:30 till 9. I'm like, well, I don't want to eat breakfast at 9. I want to eat breakfast at like 1:30. Which obviously you can't really do in a hotel because it's all dictated by them. So I like staying in apartments and houses and things and being able to cook for myself and things like that. And I like cooking. There's something so satisfying about cooking something for yourself. Like, you buy all the raw ingredients, grind it all up, throw it all in the pan, cook it up, and when you're left with something, not only it tastes delicious, because kind of when you make something yourself, there's that extra layer of satisfaction, but also you can look back and think, yeah, I made this meal. Like, I am a god. No, maybe it's not that bad. But maybe I should talk about what's going on screen very quickly. As you can see, the less astute of you may not be aware, but for those of you that need some extra clarification, we are currently building the monorail station, trying to emulate the style of the entrance building, but not quite as intricate because I got lazy, basically. There's no other way around it. And also, I kind of wanted to make it look a little bit more varied because I wanted this to be very obviously a separate building, not just kind of like, I don't know, an annex of the main visitor centre. So there's that. So yeah, that's all I had to say really. I was kind of just winging it, to be honest. With the visitor centre, like the main entrance building that you just saw me build, I did have a very clear picture in my head as to what I wanted it to look like. This one I didn't really have a clue, so I just sort of improvised as I went along. So you might see me placing parts, then deleting them, then re-establishing them, and so on and so forth. But it's a fairly simple building, so there wasn't a whole lot of trial and error that you could possibly do. And you know, as long as you stick to the same colour scheme, it's fine. So yeah, that's the monorail. As I said, this monorail is completely aesthetic or cosmetic, whatever term you want to use. It's purely there just to serve as a means of kind of explaining how guests reach the park, because the car park here is very, very small, and we do have that hole in the side of the mountain that, unless if you don't do anything else, guests will just spawn from the hole in the mountain. But I thought that kind of looks a bit naff. So instead I'm going to put a spawn point inside this monorail station here, and the train, you can't put the monorail trains on test mode, so you just put it on open mode, but reduce the minimum waiting time and maximum waiting time down to a really low amount, so it will just continuously run and, you know, maintain the illusion that people are getting the monorail in. And then we're just going to put the spawn point kind of hidden within inside the monorail station building. It's not a perfect or particularly elegant solution, but I think it looks a lot better than having guests emerge from the cliff, or, you know, the hole in the cliff. Speaking of guests, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but for the majority of this series, at least the part I'm up to now, which I feel like I'm a good way through construction as of the time I'm recording this, I've not got any guests in the park just yet. The park has remained closed, A, because we're building this in Scenario Editor, so we have a bit more kind of powerful tools at our disposal, but also one of the issues I had when building Crimson Tower, which was the last Planet Coaster series I did, you may not have been too aware of it because most of the footage that you watch is in time-lapse, but for me building it, the frame rate just slows to a crawl when there are guests in the park, and I'm already kind of, it feels like it's, I haven't actually done a Fraps test or anything like that, but it feels sub 30 at this point, and this is just with rides and buildings and things, no guests, so I dread to think what would happen to my frame rate if I started opening the park. So at least as I record this right now, so I think for a majority of this series we're going to have the park closed to guests, and this series is basically going to be a showcase of construction of rides and buildings, which I guess is what you watch Planet Coaster for anyway. Don't worry, there obviously will be POVs of the rides and things. In fact, they'll be even better than if the park was open, because it means that, you know, the guests won't be putting their hands up in front of the camera and things as we're going down, so it should probably be a pleasant experience for all of us. But yeah, in case the one person that might be upset by this revelation, I apologise profusely, but that is the reality of the situation, and that's what we're going with. So yeah, kind of, I couldn't really be bothered to place the same wood panelling for the upper parts of the station building as we did for the main entrance building, just because, again, I was getting a bit lazy, and it's very, very, very sort of time consuming to place the individual wooden parts that we did the main building. And I think in fact the modern wood wall parts look a little bit better, but obviously we can't rotate those beyond kind of, you know, we can't have them not be perpendicular to the ground, if that makes sense. They have to be completely upright, which isn't what I wanted to achieve with the architecture of the visitor centre. But this one I don't really care, so we're just going to use the regular modern wood planks. And I'm pretty happy with how this monorail station came out overall, to be honest. For the actual park transport, obviously I've not built it yet, and it won't be for a few episodes' time, I imagine. But for the actual park, this is the first park I've ever built. I don't think this is even Planet Coaster. I think just Roller Coaster Tycoon and Planet Coaster as a whole. We're actually going to be using a steam railway as the means of getting around the park, rather than a monorail or kind of insert other modern form of transportation. I think I used the cable cars a fair bit in Roller Coaster Tycoon, but that's not an option in Planet Coaster, so we can, you know, scratch that off quite easily. But no, I'm going to be using a steam train to get guests around the park, so that's going to be really fun. For me, I don't know if you might not find it, you might think it's deathly boring, but for me it's fun. So this is my channel. Okay, so yeah, what else we got? Oh yeah, so this is, you know, when I said earlier that this footage is going to be rather sporadic and lurches around and switches time to time, I got bored again, so I decided to start working on this hole in the cave. That sounded weird, didn't it? I don't know why. Maybe it's just my childlike brain. But yeah, like, as I mentioned earlier, I never really liked the idea of guests just spawning from a hole in the wall. So what I did was I kind of fashioned this big pathway to look like a road, so guests would come through, I don't know, some underground tunnel, as opposed to an overground tunnel. But no, they'd come from an underground tunnel, and they'd emerge, and they'd park in the car park. If they couldn't afford to park in the car park, because we charge a premium rate to park here, because it's quite an expensive park to maintain. If you don't want to do that, then you can park at a sort of off-site car park and get the monorail in. But, you know, for those with the extra dollar, we will accommodate you at a cost. and that's how you do it here. And coaches will come down here as well. I've not built the coach park of the car park just yet. It sounds like a bit of a tongue twister, rappy sort of thing, car park, but whatever. This is just me now spitballing because I can't think of anything else to say with that adds meaning. And besides, the topic has changed again because we're now back to working on the train station. But this is about as complete as we're going to get, to be honest. All we need to do is add some windows, a little roof for the entrance building, and add some pathways on the inside just as a means to place the spawn point. And then we're pretty much done for the train station, but we've still got quite a bit of video left to go, and that is because we are going to go back to finishing the visitor center. There was a little bit of footage that appears to have gone missing, but you don't really miss them much, to be honest. I'm not going to showcase any of the interior construction of the building either. First of all, because it's woefully minimalist, to put it in a positive way, on the inside, just because I hate kind of building interiors in Planet Coaster, but also mainly because of the fact that when I put the footage in time-lapse, it was very, very difficult to watch because the camera's constantly moving around. If I were to slow the footage down, this video would take 5 years, but if I were to speed it up, it would become so quick and whippy that you wouldn't even have any idea what's going on. So I decided to scrap showing off the interior design, and besides, in a few episodes down the line, we'll be changing the whole design anyway on the interior of the visitor center. At first, actually, I set out to build little shops and carefully construct all the stock inside the shops and everything and make it proper detailed, but it's just so much hassle for what it's worth, really. I mean, when I built a building, I never actually look inside it, and I think it's more just a symbolic exterior thing. So, and I just wanted to, start building coasters in this game about building coasters, so I kind of skimmed over it a little bit. But here we are building the service wing, for want of a better term, of the main. I've been calling it various. I think I've been calling it visitor center and entrance building, but for this building here, we're doing like a section for the deliveries. I kind of used the delivery zone of a supermarket in England, which I guess would be the same as anywhere else, where it's like this kind of big sort of shutter door that's slightly elevated from the ground. This is just where lorries will arrive to deliver things that will go to the restaurants or other things that require materials being delivered. This is where they get delivered to. So I kind of used a science fiction spaceship part to serve as a kind of improvised shutter effect. And then we'll just create a little doorway here. It's always good when you're trying to start out in Planet Coaster, and I still do this as well. So even if you're a veteran in Planet Coaster, and I know for a fact, kind of even better players who are better than me, which are very numerous, I might add, we all kind of do the same thing where we look at muses, and what I mean by muse is look at buildings in real life and copy features of them. I think it was the series Planet Bro Coaster that stole my idea. Well, I've been using this for a while, but I didn't realize it was something that only I did, and that is looking at model buildings. And by model buildings, I mean like things designed for model train sets and things, because they're usually quite minimalist in terms of their design, and the way they're built is actually quite easy to replicate in Planet Coaster, whereas real life buildings are often somewhat harder to kind of emulate in the game, in this game. So yeah, I use kind of model railway buildings, but I use a whole host of things, to be honest, but that's just one thing that I was just surprised that no one else did. So maybe it might be useful for you to hear that as well, that model buildings, like things like railways and road things, are a good little way of finding things to inspire you. God, that was a very horrible thought process, but whatever, I think it's done now. So here we are. As I mentioned earlier, this is the service entrance. Obviously, we don't want guests driving up here with their prying old eyes, so I'm building this sort of guard station that operates a little barrier that will allow trucks and things to get past, but Aunt Betty, who's gone the wrong way, she could be turned right the way round, son. So not much more to say about this, really. God, I'm really flagging now. I'm just trying to think of things to say without I don't want to get this to get boring, or at least any more boring than it probably already is. But also I don't want to just keep saying that. Yeah, I don't know what I was trying to achieve with this sentence. My head is a jungle right now, ladies and gentlemen. I need to go to bed after this, to be honest. I'm going to set this to run and then have a nice 40 wings. So here we are, just constructing the barrier. I was kind of going that the barrier is this really goofy long pole, so I did add like a support structure at the other end. And I kind of added those ropes and sort of general miscellaneous pieces to add a bit of structure to it, to make it a little bit more believable that this thing could be that long. I don't know why that would be ever in doubt, but whatever. And then we'll just add some generic sort of roof pieces just to square off this bit. And then we'll add kind of another floor just to close off that kind of jaggedy edge from one of the wings of the visitor centers. Now, the only thing really that the main entrance building is missing is the center of it. You can see we've kind of got that big hole And I needed to find a way of plugging that. So that's what we'll get to in a second. This is the bit now where I said earlier that I was going to skip over, which is the construction of the interiors. You can kind of see me placing a sort of basic layout, and I essentially just elevated this. So I took that wall there, built a pathway inside, and then just built it up higher. I thought about adding some shops and things, but really in the end I just couldn't be bothered. So maybe it's something that I'll go back to at some point, but right now it is just a plain interior. Well, right now it looks nothing like how it looks now. I replaced all the wooden parts with kind of white paneling, just because it looks a little bit more modern and a bit more sleek. But that's all. It's all very superficial and besides the point. And then we just kind of got this sort of not turnstile, but thing that splits the path a little bit more naturally, just for when guests enter the park. That's it. That's all I had to say for that. So what we have to do now is, so there we go. Put a little roof over the interior so I can kind of get a better idea of what bits need plugging. And then, we just went from there. So again, I'm making a separate building so that it can be rotated independently of the lower structures. And then we'll just kind of, I found this wood paneling, I found this, we don't do retakes in this series. I found this wood paneling that kind of looks similar to the wood used in the rest of the entrance building. I also did actually kind of want the upper bit here to kind of look different to the rest of the building. I don't really know why, but I thought it looked better actually having a sort of mimicked wood rather than using the actual wood used for the rest of the construction. It just breaks up the aesthetics a little bit. So I kind of ummed and ahed a little bit for a while about having these windows here, but eventually I decided I didn't really like the way they looked. So we deleted them. And then we can just, finish off the finishing touches. Brilliant. Finish off the finishing touches. What a quality go to this is. So yeah, just finishing off the finishing touches. And that's pretty much it in terms of the actual top of this building. You can just, I don't know if you can catch the brief glimpses of it, but there is that small gap over the actual entrance archway itself that we need plugging, but we can just do that with some wood paneling pieces and be done with it. So now we've built this topper, we can just sort of finish off the bits of the roof that needed finishing off and cover up all the holes. And this is the little hole I was talking about earlier, actually, over the entrance bit. So again, we're just going to use the wooden archways and create a nice little flush seal. And then that's pretty much it for the construction of the visitor centre, at least for now. We will come back to it later. I'll wait for the bit. There's a bit I want to talk about with this building that's incomplete right now, but I'll wait for that part to be on screen so I can elaborate a little bit better when I've got some context in front of it. So I guess I can start talking about outro stuff now, although there is still a little bit of video left to go. But I hope you enjoyed this video. There will be more to come, obviously. This is only episode 2. Yes. And obviously I've got Kerbal Space Program coming this Saturday, hopefully. The video is, I know what I'm going to do. I just haven't filmed the mission yet or built the rocket, but I know what I want to do. So it hopefully should be ready for Saturday. There's also my Twitter, Patreon, Discord, all in the description. I also have Instagram. I've never posted on Instagram, but I posted my silver play button and a lot of people commented on it saying, oh, I love your videos. I'm like, oh, I guess my followers just found my Instagram. So I'm just Matt Lowne on Instagram if you wanted to look at that. I don't Instagram very much, but that's that. This is the part I wanted to talk about, by the way. This back bit of the building here. This is where you emerge from the entrance building and get to the park itself. Obviously, it's rather underbuilt right now. I will get round to kind of making it look a little bit more elaborate in the future. There'll be some terraces, decking areas, restaurants, that sort of thing. But for now, I'm just leaving it simple because I wanted to get to doing something a bit more something in the park itself, essentially. So yes, on screen is the previous episode and a link to the full playlist. I hope you enjoyed this video, as I mentioned, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.